There's a scene in this movie with no monster, no jump scare, and almost no blood. One man, alone in a cabin, listening to the furniture laugh at him, until he starts laughing back. It might be the most influential 90 seconds in horror history. By the end of this video, I'm going to prove that every horror comedy you've ever loved, Shaun of the Dead, Cabin in the Woods, Myth-Threakin', is downstream of a deer head giggling on a wall. Welcome to our retrospective of Evil Dead 2. Welcome back to the channel, I'm Tyler, and this is part 2 of our Evil Dead Deep Dive. The 1981 retrospective with the whole video nasty trial saga is linked below. You don't need it to enjoy this one, but together, they're a bigger part of the full story. Today, how a career-ending flop and a Stephen King favor resurrected this franchise. Why this sequel couldn't legally show you the first movie, that's a wilder story than it sounds, and it's coming early in the video. In a beat-by-beat breakdown of a single scene where horror and comedy fuse into a new genre. That scene has no monster in it, just stay with me. If you remember from the last video, The Evil Dead was a hit. Stephen King's blurb is on the poster. Raimi, Campbell, and Tappert are the hottest DIY kids in the entire industry. Their follow-up, a movie called Crimewave in 1985, a screwball crime comedy co-written by a couple of unknowns named Joel and Ethan Coen. Studio interferes guts it, so it bombs, catastrophically. Overnight, the Wonderkind is a liability. Raimi can't get projects moving at all. Campbell's back to scraping. The trio's answer, reluctantly at first, is the thing fans have been demanding all along. Go back to the cabin. Raimi and co-writers Scott Spiegel, old Super 8 collaborators, had originally imagined the sequel as medieval. Ash going back in time, hold that thought till the end of this video. Problem is that no one would fund it. The cabin was the compromise. The compromise became the masterpiece. The medieval dream became the next movie. Sometimes the budget rejection is the muse. And the money that finally saved them came via the most reliable guardian angel in this franchise's history. It's 1986. Stephen King is directing Maximum Overdrive for producer Dino De Laurentiis. King, on record as an Evil Dead evangelist since Cannes Festival, learns Raimi can't get the sequel funded and personally talks De Laurentiis into backing it. DEG puts up roughly $3.6 million. The most powerful horror author alive spent his hard-won mogul access on getting the deer-head laughing movie made. Never let anyone tell you Stephen King doesn't understand cinema. Here's the brilliance of Evil Dead 2. The movie begins with a compressed, altered retelling of the original. Just Ash and Linda this time, one night, tape recorder, possession, and the dawn. Casual viewers assume it's a stylistic recap. The truth, however, is legal. The rights to the first film's footage were tangled up with its original distribution deals, and the production couldn't simply cut in scenes from The Evil Dead. So Raimi reshot the first movie's story in miniature, which turns a legal headache into an accidental thesis statement. Evil Dead 2 redoing The Evil Dead faster, slicker, and funnier in its first 7 minutes is the whole film's mission in microcosm. It also permanently scrambled the canon. Is it a sequel, a remake? Is it both? The franchise's official answer for 4 decades has been a shrug, and honestly I can respect that. Production facts for our fans of details out there: this was shot largely in Wadesboro, North Carolina. Cabin interiors built inside a school gymnasium gave us the look internally of the film, with the woods of the Carolinas standing in for Michigan this time around. The film was ultimately released unrated. Rather than put it out for an R, put it out with no rating at all, limiting its theatrical reach and making it, once again, a movie that found its true audience on video. This franchise simply can't stop having its fate decided by the VHS shelf. The centerpiece of the film's first half is Ash's right hand getting bitten, possessed, and then it declares war on the rest of Ash. It follows its most committed physical comedy performance in horror history. A man beaten up, judo flipped, and plate smashed by his own hand. This is Raimi's lifelong Three Stooges obsession weaponized. Eye pokes, pratfalls, and object-to-face percussion performed at horror intensity. The crew called the style what fans still call it, splatstick, and Campbell absorbed real punishment for it. Real smashed dishes, real slams. The director believed Bruce's genuine suffering was a production value. The Stooges did violence as rhythm. Raimi realized horror could run on the same rhythm with the blood turned on. The chainsaw self-amputation is the movie in one beat. The most horrifying thing a person can do to themselves, also staged as a punchline, but landing as both. No film before this trusted an audience to scream and laugh in the same second, rather than in alternating scenes. The hand itself scuttling off to live under the floorboards, while flipping Ash the bird via the knothole, establishes the film's deepest structural joke. The horror here is never dignified, and the comedy's never really safe. Every gag can kill, while every kill is a gag. Possessed hand puppetry, reverse motion tricks, Campbell contorting his own arm are all in camera. The scene is a practical effects clinic that modern films with 1,000 times the budget still study. So Ash has now lost his girlfriend to the Deadites, his hand to himself, and his hand again to the floorboards, where it is currently giving him the finger through a knothole. And somehow, none of that is the scene this movie is famous for. When we come back, the 90 seconds where Evil Dead 2 stops being a very good splatter film, becomes one of the most important films in horror history. It's one man, one room, 0 monsters. The furniture starts laughing. If you only watch one chapter of this video, it's the next one you should watch. So before this famous scene, let's talk about the craft around it. Everything Raimi improvised with lumber in 1981, he rebuilds here with actual resources. And instead of getting tasteful, he gets worse, but in all the best ways. The Force POV now smashes through the cabin, through windows, down corridors at highway speed. Cameras mounted on rigs, bikes, and whatever else they could find that would roll. The film's visual language is total subjectivity. When Ash flies, the camera flies. When the room spins, the set spins. When an eyeball leaves a skull, we travel with the eyeball. More cinematography before this observes chaos. The Evil Dead 2 participates in the chaos. The effects team pipeline matters here. The crew included Greg Nicotero, who, with Howard Berger and Robert Kurtzman, would found KMB EFX shortly later. That's a shot behind decades of screen gore up through The Walking Dead, where Nicotero becomes producer-director. Practical effects DNA of modern horror television was in that North Carolina gym, elbow deep in Caro syrup. Henrietta, the cellar deadite, Sam's brother Ted Raimi inside a full-body latex suit in southern summer heat, famously sweating so much that the crew had to pour the sweat out of the costume. The stop motion, the dancing headless Linda, the rotting chrome puppetry, the film's a practical effects decathlon. It's all still convincing because texture ages better than pixels. Modern horror's practical renaissance. Evil Dead Rise very much included in that. It's proving that point. Ash has, in the space of one night, lost Linda, killed Linda, buried Linda, been possessed, beaten himself up, and cut off his own hand. He's alone and the cabin is quiet. And then the mounted deer head on the wall starts to laugh at him. The lamp joins in. Books laugh too. The clock, the chair, the room, everything he can see is laughing at him. And Ash, this is the key moment, joins in the laughter. It's not just a giggle either, it's screaming laughter, tears streaming, a man applauding his own destruction along with the furniture. Then it stops, instantly. Silence, and his face just falls back into horror. And this is the most important scene in the movie, and arguably the horror comedy genre. So it's the first time a mainstream horror film located the horror inside the comedy rather than beside it. You're laughing at the laughter. The longer you laugh, the more clearly you're watching a man's mind break in real time. The scene is a trap. Your own laughter becomes evidence of how far gone he is, and you. It solves horror comedy's fundamental problem, that laughter releases tension by making laughter the threat itself. Tension isn't released here, it's converted. It's pure psychological horror rendered with zero psychology dialogue. Madness as production design. No therapist scene, no explaining. The room does the diagnosis for us. And that's the hinge of Ash's whole arc. The man who breaks in this room is the man who 1 reel later straps a chainsaw to his arm and says, "Groovy." The laughing room is the death of Ash the victim. What stands up afterward is Ash the icon. A reaction horror hero forged mid-movie by trauma, Aliens Ripley onward being the exception that predates it. To the entire modern wave, this is the scene modern horror uses as the template for the snap. And the genre takes note downstream of those 90 seconds. Peter Jackson's brain dead and dead alive, Shaun of the Dead's laughing through grief, Cabin in the Woods scream laugh engineering, We Do in the Shadows, Megan's Dance, Talk to Me's party trick possession scenes, the entire modern tradition of horror that's funniest at its most horrifying. When a scary movie makes you laugh and you feel worse, that's the laughing room's descendants collecting rent. The back half of the film assembles, piece by piece, the most beloved character in horror comedy. The chainsaw locked onto the stump, sawed off in the holster, the torn shirt, the chin. One word.
Groovy.
What's actually innovative here is Ash is horror's first true action hero, who's also horror's biggest victim. Slashers had final girls, monster movies had square-jawed heroes who suffered nobly. Ash suffers ridiculously. The movie humiliates him for 80 minutes, and then hands him the coolest weapons rig in cinema. Confidence earned through total degradation. That arc is now everywhere. Equipping, battered, self-repairing genre protagonist. Runs from 90s action horror straight through modern video games. And speaking of games, Ash's DNA is all over gaming's founding heroes. The chainsaw and shotgun loadout and the one-liner spouting lone survivor became load-bearing walls of the entire FPS genre. And Ash himself has spent decades getting invited into other franchises' rosters. The character escaped his own movies the way only true icons do. The supporting cast deserve their flowers here. Annie, the professor's daughter, is a genuinely capable co-lead, whose research drives the plot, and whose fate keeps the film's cruelty honest. The film never lets competence equal safety, which is why the comedy never makes it toothless. Evil Dead 2 is ultimately about grief metabolized as absurdity. Ash's entire night is losing Linda over and over again. Body, her ghost, her dancing corpse, her head in a vice. Until the only sane response left is insane laughter. It's modern grief horror. So Ash is armed, groovy, and finally winning. Which, if you've seen the first movie or literally any Raimi film, should terrify you on his behalf. Because no one in cinema punishes his hero like Sam punishes Bruce. When we come back, the ending that flings the franchise 800 years backward, the medieval movie Raimi wanted to make all along, the final accounting of everything modern horror still is in this film. Also, one more Ted Raimi sweat fact. You're not ready for that. So in the ending, the Necronomicon's pages open a vortex that swallows the cabin, the demon, Ash's Oldsmobile, and Ash himself, dropping him into the medieval past, where knights hail the shotgun-wielding stranger as prophesized hero. Ash being Ash screams no at the sky, and Evil Dead 2 is done. This was the original pitch for Evil Dead 2. The medieval Evil Dead Raimi and Spiel couldn't get funded in 1985, becomes the cliffhanger in 1987, and the entirety of Army of Darkness in 1992. The sequel's ending is a 5-year-long I told you so. The ending here reframes the whole film as an origin story. Evil Dead 2 is, in retrospect, a superhero origin told in a single room. Trauma, breakdown, rebuild, apotheosis, and a final panel promise of adventures to come. In 1987, before origin story grammar conquered Hollywood, a splatter film in a gym in North Carolina had already perfected it. The guy who later launched the modern superhero era with Spider-Man was practicing. In the trilogy's tonal slide, became the standard model for how genre franchises evolve tone without losing identity. P.D. Alvarez's 2013 film, and Evil Dead Rise, then proved the franchise can slide back down the same scale towards dread. No other horror series has a tonal range this wide, with a canon this happily incoherent, and it all pivots on this middle film. So some real quick ways that modern horror owes a lot to this movie. Horror comedy is a genre, not horror with jokes. Films where the scream and the laugh of the same muscle start here. The entire modern lineage runs through the laughing room. Splatstick physicality. Peter Jackson built this early career on and carried its energy into blockbusters. Every gross-out gag with comic timing owes the hand fight. The trauma-forged icon. The humiliated survivor who rebuilds mid-film into the cool hero. Now the default art for genre protagonists across film and games. Total subjectivity camera work. Raimi took it straight into Spider-Man. The hospital scene in Spider-Man 2 is an Evil Dead 2 scene wearing a Marvel costume. The man literally put Bruce in it. And Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is a dead-eyed cinema with a 9-figure budget. Multiverse of Madness isn't Raimi doing Marvel, it's Marvel finally doing Raimi. The K&B EFX lineage runs from this crew to The Walking Dead and the entire modern practical renaissance. Franchise tonal elasticity. The Evil Dead 1, Evil Dead 2 to Army of Darkness slide is the playbook for every franchise that reinvents its tone every installment. In the 2013 Rise and Burn era proves the dial can turn both ways. The gambit of redoing the original in the opening of this movie has become a legitimate sequel technique. The canon optional franchise structure, saying it's a sequel and a remake, don't worry about it, looks awfully ahead of its time in the multiverse era. If two-part deep dives, laughing furniture analysis, and horror history are your thing, subscribing keeps this series going. The 1981 video with the entire British obscenity trial saga is linked below if you missed it. I'm also on Blue Sky and on Slasher, Horror Social Lab. Links are below for both. The debate over the greatest horror sequel of all time is currently a crime scene. So come make it worse. So in the comments this time, what's your pick for the greatest horror sequel ever made? And can anything actually be Evil Dead 2? Is it Dream Warriors, Bride of Frankenstein, Aliens, something else? State your case. If you haven't seen part 1 of the series, how the original Evil Dead got made in a condemned cabin and then put on trial by the British government, again, it's linked below. Make sure you subscribe for part 3 because, yeah, we're definitely doing Army of Darkness, and I've already started practicing the words in the curse. Stay groovy, and stay scared out there. We'll see you next time.